This video is brought to you by Atomic Wheels, your go-to source for premium fully forged rims for your electric vehicle. Enhance the style and range of your Tesla or Rivian today. Go to atomicwheels.com and use code TFLEV for 10% off your order.
The first ever fully electric Jeep. Guys, this is a big deal. You know, we've seen mild hybrids from Jeep, we've seen full plug-in hybrids from Jeep, but never a complete battery electric vehicle from the ground up. I present to you the Wagoneer S. That's right, this vehicle is wearing the Wagoneer badge, which debuted in the early 1960s. But let me tell you what, this is nothing like the original Wagoneer. It doesn't have some big burly V8 under the hood. It doesn't have solid axles. This vehicle is a total departure for Jeep. And in this video, we're going on a full tour showing you inside the front trunk and talking about that all-important price tag. And the price is a big deal. We're going to talk about that at the very end of this video. Now let's talk about what this vehicle is. Now first of all, it's based on the STLA Large architecture. It's a ground-up EV, a full unibody design with independent suspension all around. Now the wheelbase is 113 inches or thereabouts, which is pretty much exactly the same as a Tesla Model Y. However, the total length of this vehicle is about 192 inches, where a Model Y is 187. So it's a little bigger in total length than a Model Y, but the wheelbase is right on the money when compared to that vehicle. The design of this Jeep is unlike anything Jeep fans have ever seen. It is more smoothed out, lower to the ground, and more aerodynamic than just about anything Jeep has ever come out with. Drag coefficient is 0.29. There's no Jeep badging at all on the front of this vehicle. Instead, what you get are these little shark teeth across the front of the vehicle that kind of illuminate a 7-slotted grille. But of course, the real air opening is down here. So it's not really a grille at all. And you know, a lot of this design doesn't say Jeep, especially the rear end, which is absolutely crazy. Now, along the side of the vehicle, 20-inch wheels, a pretty thin tire, 235/50 R20 tires, Pirelli tires, but the ground clearance is pretty minimal, 6.7 inches. So this is not a vehicle you're probably going to want to take down the Rubicon, even though it does have some off-road modes, curiously enough, which we'll talk about in a second. Quick pause here. The day after I got done filming this video, Jeep decided to unveil an off-road concept of the Wagoneer S, and I couldn't make it to that reveal, but our buddy Alex Dykes from Auto Buyer's Guide was kind enough to shoot us some footage, so watch it here now.
If you saw Tommy's video on the new Wagoneer S, but you're thinking to yourself, I'd like something with a bit more actual off-road capability, you might want to stay tuned, because this is the Wagoneer S Trailhawk concept, and we all know it's probably pretty close to production. Let's talk about what's different on it. Now, if you guys haven't noticed, I am not Tommy Micah. I'm actually Alex from Auto Buyer's Guide, but we'll take a look around here, so be sure and find our coverage on this on our channel as well. Starting out up front, you'll notice Jeep logo right there, embossed into the front rather than just a Jeep logo stuck onto the front. That's logically for aerodynamics. We have very much the same grille design that we find in the other Wagoneer S models. It's underlit, so under there we actually have some LEDs shining down on that slightly different treatment. But the biggest change, of course, is going to be the tow hook situation. Big, meaty tow hooks, because this needs to be able to recover 6,500 pounds of Jeep. This is about 300 pounds heavier than the outgoing supercharged Hellcat-powered Jeep Grand Cherokee. We have 4 of those recover hooks, driver's side, passenger side, and of course in the back as well. We also have fog lights down there. You can see those are kind of an interesting design. Those would logically change for production. We get a different aero treatment to the front than we find in the other models, probably because we get wider fenders here. So you can see they've tacked on a bit of a fender flare there over the sheet metal, and that's to accommodate these 265 width all-terrain tires. 2 inches of the lift approximately comes from the suspension, then we get about 1 inch because of the extra wheel size here and tire size. This is a 265/65 R18. Even though these look like bead lock wheels, they are not bead locks. They're saying they're just sort of bead protector wheels, so they do provide a function, but they're not going to lock the tire on there. So these may be suitable for street use, in case you're wondering. We don't have an air suspension. That was one thing I kind of expected to see. It is a regular steel spring suspension, although I don't know if adaptive dampers are going to be included. Now, on the capability front, they're calling this a 4xe desert rated model, not a trail rated model, which is a bit different. We have the Wagoneer logo right there on the front doors. And then if we take a look inside, you'll notice some changes immediately. Let's start out here with the doors. We have some retention mechanism right there, some little sort of rubber band-like things to help keep things in the door. We also find that down there in the center console, that extra storage area. But the big change is going to be right here in the middle of everything, where we find different drive modes, including a rock mode and a rear locker. That's probably the biggest change that most folks are going to be interested in. Slightly different textures going on the center console as well, and those drive modes are going to be highlighted in the infotainment system. We then find some changes to the rest of the dashboard structure. We haven't been able to see what the dashboard would be like in a regular Wagoneer S without the passenger screen, but this kind of gives us a little bit of a hint of what that might look like there. Obviously, lots of ambient lighting, and it looks like all the same luxury features that we find in the rest of the Wagoneer S lineup, with the addition of things like these open head screws there, visible head screws, I should say, and different texture to the trim panels on the doors as well. This kind of looks like wood, but Jeep has said that they're not going to be using real wood in the Wagoneer S. Memory seats for the driver and front passenger, they're identical. Four-way lumbar, adjustable thigh cushion extension, etc. And this is again about the same size as a Jeep Grand Cherokee, the 2-row model. So rear seat legroom and headroom, pretty similar. We get a little bit less headroom than in the Grand Cherokee because of the lower roofline. Same sort of retention mechanism back there for the rear doors, kind of that elastic band setup. And then back here we find a regular steel spring suspension in the rear. So no load leveling on the back, no adaptive dampers, it doesn't look like, and basically the same wheel design in the rear. Moving around to the full back end, you'll notice again those recovery hooks, very similar to what we saw up front. They've been carved out like this to help reduce the weight of the recovery hook. Recovery hooks can be quite heavy. And then we have very similar vents there to what's up front. These don't appear to be functional on this model, but who knows what might happen for the production version. If I had one ask for a production version of this, it would be some sort of spare tire. We don't find one at all. Instead, we have that 12-inch subwoofer back there in the rear and some extra storage capacity there. I would love to see at least a temporary spare tire, although I wouldn't want to go real off-roading without anything other than a full-size spare tire. There's that other tow hook there. And let's go ahead and give the hatch a close. Power close button right over there on that side. You can see these really huge wings on the side. It's part of the aero treatment of the vehicle, and this absolutely enormous spoiler on the back. That's definitely a defining feature of all the Wagoneer S trims. Other than that, we get the same sort of design language back here, same sort of taillight module and light bar running across the back. And again, Jeep logos that are really flush with the vehicle rather than stick on and stick up. This model is also showing off some future accessories that might be available for the Wagoneer S, like this functional roof rack here. They wouldn't give us an official load rating capability, but of course has that Trailhawk logo on it. I think it actually looks pretty good with this vehicle, and it definitely makes it feel more like a Grand Cherokee, more like a Jeep in person. If I go ahead and flip the camera around, you'll really notice it here, because this is actually tall enough to look more like a Grand Cherokee in person than the regular Wagoneer S, which does come across as quite low. The roofline in a regular Wagoneer S is about 6 inches lower than a Grand Cherokee, but this, thanks to the bigger tires and the suspension lift, feels a bit more like that Grand Cherokee in person. So be sure and sound off down there in the comment section below. Let us know what you all think of the Wagoneer S and this upcoming Wagoneer S Trailhawk. Do you like the look? Do you think they should have done something else? Find all of the related TFLs over at tflstudios.com. And if you want to find me, you can find me at youtube.com and search for Auto Buyer's Guide.
First Jeep also with electronic door handles. Put your hand in this little socket, pull it open, and that's how you get in. You get this silver accent line that continues all the way back to the D-pillar. Wagoneer S back here. And then we got to talk about the spoiler, the wing. Look at the size of that wing. It spans the entire rear of the vehicle. You can stick an entire arm through it. It's for aero, and there's a second little wing down here, like a Euro Ford Cosworth. So really crazy aerodynamics going on here. And then of course you got that light bar that extends the width of the vehicle. And just about the only place that says Jeep is out here in the back. But if this didn't, this could be a Range Rover or a Lexus or an Audi, which is both a compliment and a criticism, because Jeep has such a strong design DNA. And I think if you took those little shark teeth off the front, not a lot of folks would know that this is a Jeep. Now, this interior is very pre-production, so this may not be up to final standards. This is still a very early look at a Wagoneer S. But the first thing that's striking is all of the leather. This is called Radar Red. It is a high-quality leather with white contrasting stitching along the bolsters, and these seats are extremely comfortable. The next thing you notice is it doesn't feel super Jeepy in here, and once again, it doesn't say Jeep on the steering wheel. Instead, it says Wagoneer. Now, what's interesting about this is Jeep has recently kind of backtrack some of their Wagoneer plan. Originally, it was going to be like its own sub-brand. That's why the full-size Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer didn't have Jeep badges, but now they're going back to Jeep. However, this vehicle feels like it should have come out a couple years ago under that Wagoneer brand, because nothing in here screams Jeep, and certainly the seating position, very low, very tucked to the ground. You don't have that crazy upright off-roady driving position that you do in a lot of other Jeeps. Now, the big thing in here that just jumps out at you, the screens. We have over 40 inches of combined screen size. So between the main infotainment screen, the climate control screen, the gauge cluster, and even a passenger screen over here for passengers to interact with. This vehicle is dominated by technology. Love it or hate it, that is the direction Jeep has gone in. Now, we are running the latest of Uconnect 5 operating system in here. I do like this system a lot. It works very well. We do also have physical knobs for both volume and tune. In my mind, that is a really big win. And there you can see that turn on and off of the passenger screen. Phone connectivity, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all of that is fairly standard. Now below that, we have another screen, a climate control screen. We can see our massaging seats in here. We can also turn on the AC and activate everything through this screen. And then lastly, we have that instrument cluster as well, which is fully digital. Once again, pre-production, so you know, it's not up to production standards, but that'll give you a good look of what that screen's going to look like. And then, of course, you have that 10.3-inch passenger screen. I mean, it's almost a little bit overload. Other things worth noting in here. What's that, a flat bottom steering wheel in a Jeep product? Really interesting. Feels pretty premium. And this material is supposed to be like an antibacterial synthetic leather vinyl material. It doesn't feel like a traditional leather steering wheel. It feels nice, but it also feels washable, which I think is a good thing. And then we have our power button down here in the center, park, reverse, neutral drive, and this is interesting. So even though we have 6.7 inches of ground clearance, we still have sand, snow, eco, auto, and sport modes. And we also have a little terrain response mode here as well, kind of like trail control. So they haven't completely abandoned the off-road thing. I'm not convinced with these 20-inch wheels or thereabouts and 235-inch tall tires that this is going to do a lot of off-roading, but you know, when we get it back to Colorado, we're certainly going to try it out. Now, stepping into the back seat, well, a couple of things worth noting. You know, this seat is more or less in my driving position at 6 feet tall. Legroom is okay. Headroom with this full panoramic roof, it's a little compromise, folks. You know, if you are a taller individual, I think long distance headroom back here is going to be a problem. The good news is, though, your bottom is going to stay rather cool, because this is one of the few vehicles in the electric class that has heated and ventilated second row seats. So if you want to stay cool in the back seat of a EV, the Wagoneer S might be right up your alley. We also have a Macintosh sound system with 19 speakers and 1,200 watts. 1,200 watts. I think the only vehicle in this class that also uses that Macintosh sound system. Jeep has been using it for a while, and it does sound great. So pop in the hood of the Wagoneer S. Well, you're not going to find an internal combustion engine. You're also not going to find a super large front trunk. So this is more of what I coined the frubby, the front cubby. It's 3 cubic feet. Now, it's bigger than what you'd find in like an Ioniq 5 or EV6, but it is pretty shallow, even if it is quite wide. And it does have this nice little rubber on here to keep things nice and watertight. Now, let's talk about the powertrain in this vehicle. 2-motor setup, 600 horsepower, 617 pound-feet of torque. They say 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, which according to recent advertising materials should be quicker than a Grand Cherokee Trailhawk. Now, it's not Model Y performance, or certainly not Model X performance territory. Those are going to be low 3s and then low 2s respectively, but still a lot of power. And this STLA platform uses a 100.5 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. Jeep is targeting 300 miles of range, or over 300 miles of range, and we'll have official numbers closer to launch, which will be this fall. They're also targeting about 99 mpge combined in the EPA. Charging times. Well, I tried to get a kilowatt number out of them for peak DC charging rates, and the best they could give me is 20 to 80% in 23 minutes. Not fantastic when you consider like an Ioniq 5 will do 10 to 80% in under 20 minutes, 20 to 80% in 23. It's kind of an odd number. And then they're saying, you know, level 2 charging times should be right around 7 hours. So It's not awesome for a fully electric vehicle. We're gonna have to get out in the real world and see how it does. But yeah, hopefully we can see some higher charge numbers than that in the future. So power liftgate in this Wagoneer S, and that's gonna reveal about 30 cubic feet worth of space when the seat is up. 30.6 to be exact. Which is roughly on par with what Tesla has done. Now, it's not a super large loading bay in this vehicle, not crazy wide, not crazy tall, but a decent lift over height, and of course, rear seats can be folded down. So that will greatly expand the cargo capacity, and we have a nearly flat loading floor here as well. So overall, a pretty usable trunk in the Wagoneer S. And check this out. Popping open the charge port, which is over here on the rear left side of the vehicle, you might notice it's a CCS charge port. So J1772 and then your CCS combined port there for DC fast charging. This vehicle has not yet gone to the NACS connector. Now let's talk about pricing on this Wagoneer S. Now, Jeep is launching with the Launch Edition. Okay, that makes sense. $72,000. Basically no options. You have some color options and you can option a tow hitch, but $72,000, and that is before incentives. So where does this position the vehicle? Well, a fully loaded, topped out Model Y Performance is going to be about 64, 65. But on the other end of the spectrum, a Mercedes-Benz EQE is going to be high 70s and a BMW iX is going to be high 80s. So this vehicle is kind of in an interesting space where it's not at that EV6 Ioniq 5 Model Y category, but it certainly isn't like iX level in terms of price point. It's kind of there in the middle. And we don't have any word about cheaper versions coming. So far Jeep is launching with the Launch Edition, which makes sense again, but is there going to be like a more stripped down version for $55,000 or $60,000? Well, no word on that yet. Now, here's where I am with this vehicle. If Jeep had indeed created a sub-brand called Wagoneer that had its own dealer network, that had its own kind of universe that was separate from the Compasses and the Wranglers of the world, the Wagoneer S would make a lot of sense to me because this is kind of a premium thing. You're buying alongside a $100,000 Grand Wagoneer. You know, it makes sense. But now that they've kind of reversed track on that a little bit, it's kind of looking a little expensive, especially when the dealership experience, once again, you're going to be buying this along vehicles like a Compass, for example, or a Wrangler, which is not at all what this vehicle is targeted as. I kind of feel like this is like the Hyundai Genesis situation where the vehicle is very premium, but are buyers going to go for it when it's being marketed next to a Willys edition of a Wrangler? That's really where I'm at with this vehicle. Still a lot of specs we don't know, specifically around charging. You know, 20 to 80% in 23 minutes, I believe is the number they quoted. It's okay. It's not fantastic though. So a lot of unknowns. In my mind, I really think some of those off-road modes are a little bit of a marketing thing with 6.7 inches of ground clearance, and especially on this one that has these black wheels with the 235/50 R20 tires. This is not going to be a rock crawler, certainly not with that approach angle. So it is cool that you can dial in like a sand mode or, snow mode, but, I don't know, it just doesn't have a ton of that Jeep DNA, but we're going to have to get it out on the road and see what it's like to drive, see if it does live up to that Jeep standard. I think certainly from a luxury aspect, Jeep has a lot of features in here that are going to be really appealing to a luxury buyer, like the ventilated second row, like the heated second row. If you are into tech, 45 inches of screen space is pretty nuts, right? So these are all things that EV buyers want. At least according to what I've read in the comments, and EV buyers like tech. So look, folks, we're just going to have to drive it at this point. I'm not really sure where I stand on this vehicle. We'll have to get on the road, see what it's like to drive. But a big thank you to Jeep for inviting me out to New York to check out the Wagoneer S. As always, this has been Tommy behind that camera, Alex. We'll see you in another video.